On December 28, 1978, United Airlines Flight 173 was on its final approach to Portland International Airport. On board were 181 passengers and crew. The flight was uneventful until a relatively minor issue arose. A landing gear indicator light failed to illuminate. This simple technical glitch set in motion a chain of events that would ultimately lead to a preventable tragedy, claiming the lives of 10 people and injuring 21 more. This is a story about human failure and a stark reminder of what happens when communication breaks down, when expertise is silenced, and when authority overrides reason. As the flight crew began to troubleshoot the landing gear light, their focus became singular and intense. The captain, an experienced and highly respected pilot, became fixated on the mechanical problem. He requested permission to enter a holding pattern, circling close to the airport to assess the situation. This decision, while seemingly logical, was the first mistake. By entering the hold, the aircraft was consuming precious fuel. This became the problem as the crew became distracted by the non-critical issue of a faulty light, neglecting the critical issue of their fuel level. The captain's authority and intense focus on the landing gear problem created a tunnel vision that excluded all other concerns. He believed a safe landing was impossible without a clear indication that the gear was down and locked. Despite the captain's tunnel vision, there were voices of reason in the cockpit. The flight engineer, a specialist in the aircraft systems, was acutely aware of the rapidly diminishing fuel supply. He made repeated, increasingly urgent attempts to warn the captain. "We're running low on fuel. We ought to go in. The engines are starting to spool down. We've got about 5 minutes of flight time left. They're going out." These warnings were direct, clear, and based on objective data. The flight engineer was doing his job, providing critical information to the captain. The captain repeatedly dismissed the flight engineer's warnings. As the crew prepared for a final approach for an emergency landing, they lost the number 1 and number 2 engines to a flameout, at which point a mayday was declared. This was the last radio transmission to air traffic control. It crashed into a wooded section of a populated area of suburban Portland. Why didn't the captain listen? The correct term is authority bias. And ultimately, the final authority rested with the captain. He perceived the flight engineer's repeated warnings as insubordination or a distraction from the primary problem he was trying to solve. This is called cognitive fixation. His mind was so locked onto the landing gear problem that he could not process new, contradictory information. He had a plan, and he was sticking to it, even as the situation changed dramatically. Unfortunately, the cockpit environment lacked the psychological safety necessary for a subordinate to challenge a superior's decision. The flight engineer, despite his clear concern, was unable to assert his point with the force and authority needed to break through the captain's fixation. His warnings were presented as suggestions, not as urgent, mission-critical data. The co-pilot, another authority figure in the cockpit, also failed to intervene effectively. The tragedy of Flight 173 is a powerful lesson for every organization, team, and individual. It demonstrates that hierarchical structures, while necessary, can become a liability without a culture of open communication and mutual respect. To prevent this from happening again, we must all commit to the following. Challenge the status quo. Do not assume that the person in authority has all the information. Be persistent, professional, and clear. Create psychological safety. A leader's primary responsibility is to create an environment where everyone feels safe to speak up without fear of reprisal or ridicule. And a leader who cannot be challenged is a leader who is at risk. Listen actively and acknowledge. When someone speaks up, especially if they are expressing a concern, stop what you are doing, look them in the eye, and acknowledge what they have said. The chain of command is a chain of communication, not a blockade. Remember, Flight 173 did not crash because of a mechanical failure. It crashed because of a communication failure. Let us honor the victims and the courage of the flight engineer by building organizations where every voice matters and every warning is heard.